Hello, BookTube. It's Friday, a very snowy Friday here in Boston. We did indeed get a snowstorm last night and most of today. Periods where it's hardly snowing at all, other periods where it's almost blizzard conditions. It's supposed to wind down as the day wears on, but it's not supposed to be snowing at sunset. And then no snow or precipitation of any kind in the forecast, so it'll be clean up and just watching this stuff melt away. But Friday is a day for a particular BookTube event, a particular BookTube ritual that I really like, and that's Friday Reads, where we all stop what we're doing, or a lot of us do, stop what we're doing and simply talk about books, either that are on our radar or that we've just finished or that we finished this week, that sort of thing. I've had a number of emails from a great number of you, a greater number of you than have ever reached out on any other subject, saying that you're okay with me making book-related videos even though Europe is at war. I'm going to continue to do that. Believe you me, I need the release of it the same as you do. So I thought I'd do a Friday Reads where we look at a whole bunch of books that I haven't read. I don't think there's anything on this list that I've read, although some of them are sequels. So some of them are things that I've read from the author before that are upcoming. I think all of these are February or March releases. So you know, if something strikes your fancy, that's another thing I love about Friday Reads is I get to listen to people talk about books that I've either already read and maybe want to reconsider, or that I haven't read and maybe ought to go on my own TBR. So we'll start off with The Gaze. You got to give something to The Gaze. And this is by Eric J. Brown, and it's All That's Left in the World. And it's a gay YA novel about two boys who meet cute at the end of the world. there's a post-apocalyptic meet cute YA thriller, or YA novel about two boys finding love when there's precious little else to find. This could be really good. It could be very, very engaging. It seems to me that if there's been some sort of worldwide plague or EMP or solar flare or something or other, and millions of people are dead, it seems to me a little bit weird to inject a meet cute love story into that, but if the author can manage it, then the author can manage it. Then we have Martin Walker's latest thing. This is Brunos Challenge, and this is I believe Martin Walker's first collection of short stories starring his mystery solving sleuth Bruno in the French countryside, which is beautifully evoked in these books. I haven't read them all, but I read the series when it kicked off. I've read a couple of the more recent ones. And I honestly don't know what this author can do in the short story form. I know that the short story periodicals exist. Ellery Queen and I'm drawing a blank on the other one. I've got one right here. Alfred Hitchcock. These square-bound periodicals like these that come out every month. They are a living market for your short story work. So if you've got a character like Bruno and his cast of characters, and you have a story in mind, you're not sure it'll make a novel, and you might like to get a short story out there, you have venues. Oh, I don't want to block the bean. Here, we'll put her in the middle here. Or no, maybe I can put this over here. You don't want to block the bean. She's the star of the show. There we go. What I'm trying to say is that these authors have a venue for short form work of their beloved characters. So a lot of them take it. And I don't think I've ever read a short story by this author, so I'll give it a try. Then the next one is an author that I believe I have read. This is a romance novel by Jennifer Ryan, the first book in a new series. This is Chase Wilde Comes Home. There you have him. That doesn't look very comfortable, but you've got a dog approaching, so all will soon be well. And if I remember correctly, this is the story of a demobilized soldier who takes over the administration of a home for traumatized military animals and humans. And that gives him a chance not only to pay back some mental debts of his own, but also a second chance with the girl he left behind. We'll see. That the description, I seem to remember the description I read sounded like this had a little too much going on to really work. The key with novels like this is that if you've got 4 plot lines, you've got 3 plot lines too many. But we'll see. We'll see. Jennifer Ryan I have read before. I'm almost certain of that. I'd have to ask Sarah at a Bookish Knitter to make sure. Then we have science fiction / fantasy, a nice blending of the two. This is by Jeff Ting, and it's called Dawn of the Deiridium. That is the rather evocative cover there, and this is the story of future Earth in which there's been a massive environmental catastrophe. And I mean massive, not a question of too much plastic in the ocean, but huge sections of the world that can't be occupied anymore. And humanity has moved to the Arctic. And in the setting of this story, a few humans seem able to tap into the Earth's magnetic field in a way that no one else can do, that effectively gives them superpowers. I'm assuming that this young man on the cover is one of the main characters displaying those superpowers. That's always interesting. It's always interesting for me when a fantasy novel of some kind grounds the superpowers that some characters are going to have in some sort of science instead of in magic. And this is a perfect example, much like, for instance, David Weber's ongoing series or The Dragon Riders of Pern, where you can effectively blur the line between science fiction and fantasy. Because I'm pretty sure that the characters in this world don't know anything about science. I could be wrong about that. I'm just going off a brief description. Then this next one is a known quantity to me. I haven't read this book, but I read its predecessor. This is by Clive Carter, and it's called Deception Island. It's a Tyson Greer novel. Tyson Greer is a two-fisted action hero who leads an action hero team that is vaguely associated with the U.S. government, but they are a strike force unto themselves. The first book in this series, I don't remember the title of it off the top of my head. The title was just as boring as Deception Island, and introduced the characters and introduced this writer's writing style, and I liked it. I liked it a lot. I remember I got it as a deal from Amazon, and as I've always said on this channel, especially in Friday Reads, if the author manages to make me want more when I get a book on a deal like that, or for $1 or something like that, if I get to the end of the book and the author has managed to make me want more, then they have done their job. They have done their job after that, as long as we're not talking $35 for a new hardcover from one of the big five. If the new release is $4, then I'll pay it because the author has warranted it. So I will gladly try this thing and see if Tyson Greer can appeal to me a second time. Then this next one is, I have read some of the books in this series, enough to know that I like them. These are by Alex Cava, who's not... It doesn't command a prose style that I really like, but I do like this series. This is Fallen Creed. And this is the latest in... This will be... I think this is coming out later, maybe March. This will be the latest book in his series of adventures of his canine trainer, unit expert, Rider Creed. That's why all the titles have Creed in them. He trains canines for special duties and whatnot, and has a supporting cast of his own that are involved in that work. And that's the pretext by which Cava gets him involved in various murder mysteries and thrillers and whatnot. And the pacing is okay. The concept is okay. The characters are well drawn. The dogs aren't egregiously poorly written, which is always a living element for me. I don't know. I always come back to this author, but there's something about the prose style here that just doesn't gel with me completely. I'll read this next one and see. Certainly, I am not talking about a decrease in the author's credit in the Bank of Steve. Not at all. It's just there's something that I so often read scenes in this author's novels and think, well, that was effective, but I would have done it differently. And I never have that feeling when I'm reading fiction. Never. I might read a piece of crappy fiction and think, well, I wouldn't have done this at all. Better to go into shoe sales. But I almost never want to rewrite prose. This author always brings that out in me. I don't know why. Then we have an established figure in the murder mystery genre. This will certainly be on your TBR for March Mystery Madness, which is coming up. This is Give Unto Others by Donna Leone. This is a Commissario Brunetti novel set in Venice. This is an ongoing series, shows no sign of flagging. It's absolutely great. The novels, I mean, you're up to like 20-something novels, so they have ups and downs, right? They're not always going to be of a pattern, but they're always intelligently done and heartfelt as well. There we go. The bean has shifted her face, so this can be over here now. The one flaw that I have with this series of books, and I'd shared with another book on this list today, is that the actual plotting, the actual mystery plotting, is often sketchy. Sometimes only barely sketchy. So you really have to go into this for the characters, Brunetti and his wife and his family, and also the setting, of course. Venice is beautifully evoked in these books. Not always for the brain-bending mystery involved. Same thing is true with, now that I think of it, with the Bruno books, where they're clearly patterned after Donoghue. They're clearly meant so that the evocation of the setting is a large part of why you read the book. Nothing wrong with that. Just go into it knowing that. Then we have Memories Legion by the writing team going under the name of James Corey. This is the complete short stories. And again, this is the same thing as with the Bruno collection. Sometimes an author has little stories that are ancillary. They're in orbit around the bigger stories that form the novels. Sometimes that happens. And so you write a short story, and maybe you write more than one. And these have been scattered all over. I'm sure there are plenty of them that I haven't read. These are all short stories set in and around the larger narratives of the Expanse novels. So I'm hoping to get a finished hardcover of this thing. That would be nice. And then we have another romance. This is not only another romance, but also another sort of healing second chance romance for an ex-soldier. This is by Josie Jade and Janie Crouch, and it's called Montana Danger. And I don't think I've ever read these authors. I don't even know how this book came up on my radar. But this is another example of the plotline being an ex-soldier who is looking for emotional healing and eventually finds love. I know very little about it. It won't take more than an hour to read, so I'll gladly devote the time. Okay, then this next one is the first book in a new fantasy series about a downtrodden young character, young man who he's the lowest caste of his society, has to work his way up by his strong right arm, by his sharp swords. In other words, a very familiar pattern, a very familiar outline to a plot. Don't mind that at all. I don't care one way or another. I only care about how it's done. So we shall see. The main challenge here is not going to be reading the book, even though I've read a million examples like this. It's going to be pronouncing one of the author's names. The book is called Paragon, book number 1 in Paragon of Blood. And the authors are Alex Knight and Luke. Now, Luke, you let me know. This is Luke Chmelenko? I'm going to say it's something like that. Chmelenko. Very evocative cover artwork, very comic booky. We shall see. Maybe the book is inspired by comic book sentimentalities. Okay, then the next book is also a murder mystery, heavy on the murder mysteries because we're headed into March. We're headed into March Mystery Madness. This is the latest Maisie Dobbs novel by Jacqueline Winspear. This is A Sunlit Weapon with the standard Maisie Dobbs cover artwork. Those of you who don't know this series or this character, the first book is called Maisie Dobbs. Just get it from the library. You're going to fall in love with this series. It's fantastic. It's these novels, as the series goes on, are less and less legitimate standalones. The Bruno novels, for instance, you could pick any one of them and you'd be fine. The Brunetti novels, you could pick any one of them and you'd be fine. The Maisie Dobbs novels, maybe not so much. The last couple have been really pronounced in that direction, and this one I expect will be the same way, where you really do feel like you need to read a bunch of earlier books first. And you kind of do. And at a certain point, there's very little an author can do about that. Right? Because the characters aren't just amnesiacs. They are remembering and growing out of their previous adventures, which is why I always say, if you've got a great character and a great supporting cast, a great idea for a scene or a setting, write 3 or 4 books and then stop. Once you get up to 12 or 15 or 20 or 30 books, it's totally unrealistic. Then you have entered what is colloquially known as the Cabot Cove territory. Cabot Cove is the little town in Maine where Jessica Fletcher lives in the Murder, She Wrote stories and in the Murder, She Wrote TV series. And it's ridiculous. You reach a comical point where it would be attracting, Cabot Cove would be attracting world news for how many people end up murdered. Where you actually are requiring that everyone involved simply live under a fog of anesthesia all the time, where they're not remembering anything. It doesn't make any sense. And when you drag out a series this long, even when the books themselves are delightful, I'm sure that this will be delightful. But when you drag out a series of recurring characters this long, there's no way to avoid that. None at all. So you just have to stop. No matter how popular the books are with fans, you have to hope that the fans are coming for you, not Maisie Dobbs, and that they'll come back to you for some other character. It's my one problem with series that go on this long, even though when I see a new Maisie Dobbs book on the list, I'm thrilled. I've been reading from the beginning. I'm very eager. Okay, then we have a book by Stanley Korngold. He's fantastic as a historian. I think he's also a really good translator. And this is The Mind in Exile, Thomas Mann in Princeton. Mann left Nazi Germany in the 1930s. He knew perfectly well he was going to end up in a camp or dead, or both. And so he left Nazi Germany and came to America and was installed at Princeton. He gave lectures that were wildly popular, wildly popular. People lined up the stairs, people standing in the aisles, people standing in the hallway outside, only barely able to hear anything. He wrote books at Princeton. I know that there are some dyed-in-the-wool Thomas Mann fans who really like the stuff that he wrote in his American Exile. I myself don't. Mann always used to say, you know, Germany's gone to hell, but I am Germany. I carry enough of it with me so that the implication being my work will not change. My work is deeply rooted in the creative culture of the Germany that is now gone and that I hope will one day return. But it's rooted in me, so it doesn't matter where I am. I have never agreed with that. I think that Mann's work takes on a completely different tenor when it's being written in America, and a largely lesser tenor, in my opinion. But this will be an in-depth look at his time there. He also left the campus many, many times to go on long speaking tours that were also wildly popular. A great period in this great author's life for somebody to examine. It's fine by me. I don't need my biographies to be, 1,000-page longs and cover everything. I'm perfectly happy to get, a keyhole emphasis on one part of an author's life or a character's life. Then this next book is by B.N. Rundle. The cover says that B.N. Rundle is a best-selling author. I don't know if that's an online phenomenon. I am not, to put it mildly, holding out high hopes for this book, but it is connected with an event looming on the horizon. This is called The Trail to Reparation, a Plainsman Western Series, Book 5. And here you have a classic photo montage, ugly modern Western cover. Those of you who watch Michael K. Vaughan's channel, he has shown you a number of these modern Western covers that are just ugly. They're just hideous. He is perched on a ledge overlooking a canyon. He has his gun poised, even though from the distance that he is from that canyon, he couldn't hit anything with that gun. For some reason, he has a hat on, even though he's in the Rockies and there is clearly visible snow on the mountains. He does not have a coat. He's just sort of crouched there on his own in his shirt sleeves. And there's an eagle in the sky and a lightning bolt. just you see these modern covers and they just go, ugh. Because the one thing you could always count on in an old Western novel, disposable novel, I expect this to be intensely disposable, was that they would have an originally commissioned painting on the cover. And it would sometimes be the best thing, often be the best thing about the book. If the cover of this thing is the best thing about the book, I'm in big trouble. But the thing that this is connected to is that Michael and I are seriously considering a book event, June on the Range, where we waste a large part of June reading throwaway crappy Westerns, or maybe occasionally a good Western as well. And if Michael and I decide to do that, I am going to advocate that we draft a number of you, that we deputize you as members of our posse for June on the Range. So this is a little preparation for that. I'm certainly not in any danger of running out of Westerns. Good Lord. There have been 2 million of them printed. I could go to the Brattle Bookshop the next day that it isn't snowing and find 50 of dime store Western novels. Or I could also go for great Western novels. I could reread some great Western novels. Perfectly option there. Then the last one that we'll look at today is a big work of history, autobiography, but with history woven in because it's a historian's autobiography. I first learned about this book in a big, wonderful write-up that it got in the TLS, and immediately wanted to read it and thought maybe I would have to order a copy because I wasn't sure that it would ever get an American publication, but it is getting an American publication. This is We Don't Know Ourselves, A Personal History of Modern Ireland by Fintan O'Toole. Who's an author that I really like, and this is a story of his growing up so it's a history of modern Ireland, but really it's a history of my Ireland. I mean, he does, as far as I can tell, he does do some looking back to periods when he would have been a child or right before he was born. This is mostly an autobiography of the Irish history that unfolded in his own lifetime. And that's okay with me. That's just fine with me. I can't wait to read this because it will be the history of Ireland that's unfolded in my own life as well. So it'll be of inherent interest. We shall see if I get a physical copy or maybe just an e-arc. But anyway, there you go. That is a Friday Reads. for the last Friday of February. A very snowy, blizzardy last Friday in February. These are all things that I know a little about. I will knock off a whole bunch of them this weekend or in the coming weeks. And I'd love to know what's on your docket, especially if you don't have a BookTube channel. I religiously watch Friday Reads videos. All the people who do have BookTube channels, but a lot of you don't. And I'd love to know what you're working on this weekend. And also whether or not you have snow where you are, since this snow is part of a storm that dumped a lot of bad weather on a big chunk of America. I don't think we have to worry about much after this. I think it'll be a slow, steady slide into spring. But it's a mess out there now, so feel free to complain about that as well. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this up, but I'll see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.